Gentleman from Arlington, Mr. Lopez, explain the floor amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the amendments. If we're going to say no to the EPA's Clean Power Plan with this, with HJR 608, we should at least acknowledge the problem that the Clean Power Plan is seeking to address and provide our own solution to reduce carbon pollution and combat climate change. The scientific consensus about climate change is overwhelming. According to NASA, the first 12 years of the 21st century have been warmer than any of the preceding years of the last century, with each year setting new records. In 2012, the months of May, July, and September were the warmest on record since record-keeping began in 1880. The summer of 2012 was the third hottest summer ever recorded, while July 2012 broke all records, being the warmest month in recorded history. In 1979, well before climate change became a hot-button political issue, a National Academy of Sciences report concluded, and I quote, "We now have incontrovertible evidence that the atmosphere is indeed changing and that we ourselves contribute to that change. Atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide are steadily increasing, and these changes are linked with man's use of fossil fuels. A wait-and-see policy may mean waiting until it is too late." Hampton Roads, second only to New Orleans in terms of vulnerability to sea level rise in the U.S., is seeing more frequent storm surges and higher tides than ever before. Norfolk, which has seen sea level rise 14 inches in the last 80 years, regularly has parts of the city blocked off due to flooding during heavy rainstorms, and insurance companies are refusing to insure properties within 2 miles of the coastline. According to a 2013 report from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, seas are expected to rise another 1.5 feet within the next 20 to 50 years. Our coastal communities will be inundated, severely threatening agriculture, forestry, fisheries, tourism, and many other sectors coastal communities rely on for their livelihood. We have known about this issue for decades, and the consequences of inaction are too significant for us to continue kicking the can down the road. We need to reduce carbon pollution. Whether we do so through the EPA's Clean Power Plan or our own Virginia-based solution, it is clearly time for action. Let me just say, we know that special interests will make doomsday claims about killing jobs and hurting the economy. They've made these claims every time America sets clear rules and better standards for our air and our water and our children's health. And every time they've been wrong. In 1990, when we took steps to stop acid rain, those special interests claimed electricity bills would rise, the lights would go out, and businesses around the country would suffer. Doomsday folks were wrong then and they're wrong now. EPA's goal, simply put, is to reduce nationwide carbon emissions 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. This is a reasonable and modest goal that we can help achieve by reducing carbon emissions in Virginia 38% below 2012 levels by 2030. This plan sets out a flexible, achievable approach for carbon pollution reductions. The CPP gives Virginia the flexibility to design its own implementation plan for meeting these targets. This sensible approach gives Virginia the autonomy to determine how to achieve its carbon reduction target in a way that promotes job creation and helps build economic opportunities in Virginia. Keep in mind, finally, that Virginia's neighboring states are already doubling down on solar and clean energy options. With the right policies in place, Virginia also has the potential to create thousands of jobs and tens of millions in economic development. Jobs that currently go to North Carolina, which far outpaces us in solar energy, jobs that currently go to West Virginia, whose wind industry has far outpaced ours, and to Maryland, whose energy efficiency industry is about to save them a whopping 15% on their energy consumption. The protection and preservation of Virginia's environment is included in Virginia's Constitution and should not be a partisan issue. If we have the chance to create more jobs, increase economic development, lower monthly power bills, improve public health, and create a cleaner and healthier environment for future generations, why wouldn't we act immediately? With that in mind, I hope the body will pass my amendment, and if not, I hope it will be the will of the body to reject HJR 608. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, my question would be, as I look at the printed amendment he's proffered here, I would question the accuracy of this statement, because the two questions that are raised, one, what he is citing as guidelines, from the EPA, the proposed guidelines, I understand those quotes are rather their justification in the narrative for why they're proposing the guidelines and not the guidelines themselves. And secondly, could he give us concrete data as to what percentage, as he says, a vast majority of scientists, what percentage and on what empirical situs he has concluded that of all the scientists, either in the world or in America, they all have come to this conclusion?
I appreciate thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the gentleman's question. During the Kyoto Protocol debates, during the IPCC debates in Congress, university scientists, university professor, people from all over the world, Nobel laureates, came together and agreed through the IPCC that man-made pollution is causing or helping exacerbate climate change. More often than not, anecdotally, as you were saying, opposition is supported by industry, supported by the auto industry. Take, for instance, during the Clean Air Act debate back in the 1990s, you had a fairly interesting divide in who was supporting what side. And just to go to the other point you made, the delegate made, in a publication titled Climate Change, Evidence and Causes, but the United States and the National Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Science of the United Kingdom, the Royal Society, jointly confirmed, scientists know, this is a joint study from the Royal Academy of Science and the National Academy of Science in the United States. 3 points. Scientists know that recent climate change is largely caused by human activities. 2, human activities have significantly disturbed the natural carbon cycle by extracting long buried fossil fuels and burning them for energy. And 3, global warming of just a few degrees will have serious impacts on human societies and the natural world. I would stand with the National Academy of Sciences and the Royal Academy of Science any day of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the gentleman from Arlington states that the scientific consensus is overwhelming and irrefutable. Well, those are words that liberals like to use to shut down the conversation. Those are words that liberals like to use to stop the debate. Well, irrefutable and overwhelming is nonsense for this so-called global warming. And let's look at scientific consensus. Scientific consensus. Scientists have, many have started looking at the Earth, at the planet, the history. Throughout the history, the normal factors of varying degrees of temperature. There has been warm periods of this planet. There has been cold periods of this planet, including ice ages, where the Earth would get colder and the Earth would get warmer. And in fact, their climate science even fails to consider other natural factors, such as this one little component called the sun. You know, that one little hot spot out there in space. That with the sun, there is a varying degree of temperature where it will get hotter and it will get colder. So to say that the scientific consensus is overwhelming and irrefutable is nonsense.
The sun is more influential with respect to climate change than any things that humans have done. To state otherwise is hubris of a magnitude that I can't even comprehend or articulate.
And if you take a look at this picture, it'll give you some idea about why scientists are scared down to their toes and why 97% of the climate scientists in the country agree that climate change is occurring and that it's man-made. And that why so many institutes from around this world agree with that. There is not one scientific institute in any other country that disagrees with climate change. And if you can find one, it probably is from a place like Madagascar. This is the CO2 levels in the atmosphere and how they've been rising for a long, long time. And it just shows that for the last 650,000 years, the atmospheric carbon dioxide has never been above this line. And all of a sudden, we got this huge blip. That's what's got scientists spooked. Because when you put too much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it tends to get absorbed. It gets absorbed by the ocean. And it has two effects. One, it raises the water temperature, which creates all kinds of possibility for climate disruption. The other thing it does is it acidifies the ocean, which for Virginians, we should be very concerned about. Those two things. When the ocean warms, ice melts, and sea levels rise. So, here's another one. How's that? I get it right this time because you're paying attention. This is the sea level rise. And this is what gives people, not just scientists, heartburn. And if you live in certain parts of Virginia, it should give you heartburn too. 78% of all Virginians live within 20 miles of the Chesapeake Bay, the ocean, or tidal water. 78%. 626,000 Virginians live within 6.5 feet of sea level. Norfolk, Poquoson, Virginia Beach, Newport News, you can go on and on and on. As sea level rises, we have a huge impact to potentially face. And we do nothing at our own peril. But don't just trust me. Let's talk about other people, the economics people, the American actuaries. Those are the people who are insurance folks who try to determine the amount of losses from insurance claims every year. Did you know last year, of all of the world's catastrophes weather-wise, the United States had the top 5, Hurricane Sandy being one of them. The actuaries are talking about climate change and worried about the insurance implications. In Virginia, if you have some interest, you can read a little book called Virginia Fire. It's written by a scientist named Stephen Nash, and he goes through the implications of a foot sea level rise for Virginians, whether it's man-made or not. A foot sea level rise for Virginians could inundate 40 square miles of what is now dry land. So if you all live near the coast, you ought to be concerned about that. It will cost billions of dollars. We all ought to be concerned about that. This resolution just serves to poke our finger in the eye of the EPA without addressing the problem. If we don't put together a climate change plan in Virginia, the feds are going to do it, and we may not like the result. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will vote against the resolution and try to work on our own plan that some folks in here have been trying to do and get it done so we can protect future generations from sea level rise and the impacts of climate disruption. Thank you.